Ladies, what is going on with your money? Have you become a Bitcoin convert yet, or cryptocurrency you're still not sure about? How about your career? Have you decided that this year is the year you are going to take the plunge and finally negotiate for a raise or a promotion? Or are you going to go look for a better job? How are you going to increase your income this year? And yes, even in a pandemic, it can be done. How about your relationships? Do you have an accountability partner? Someone with whom you can talk about your money plan, your cash flow plan, your budget. If you are married, this should be your spouse. You guys should make your budget together, because how you decide to spend your money together reflects how you want to spend your life together. And if you're not married, you need to get someone in your corner who will be there, not encouraging you to go to Target, not encouraging you to shop the Amazon sales, but encouraging you instead to stick to your goals and to do the hard things when things are hard. Who can your accountability partner be? It could be a friend who has gone through the baby steps, or a Financial Peace University coordinator. It can be a financial coach. I'm a financial coach. I have a couple of spots open. If you need coaching, if you need an accountability partner to help you stay on track and finally make some progress with your money goals, just shoot me a DM. I would love to help you. Now, back to the show. Welcome to the katihyershow. I am your host. I like to see myself as your metaphorical older sister, making all the mistakes in money so you don't have to. And I will share all the things we learned, my husband and I, as we went through the very hard, very difficult process of finding ourselves in 6 figures of student loan debt and then working like crazy to get those suckers paid off. And my, did we learn some stuff along the way. We cried ourselves to sleep some nights. We argued like crazy some days. You know, some people say, oh, we held on to each other during those hard times, but it was just to get a better grip. Well, I know what that's like. I have had to choose between paying for laundry and paying for groceries. I know what those hard choices are like. I know what those impossible decisions feel like when you're faced with endless possible decisions because your money situation is a mess. I know what that's like. In fact, I realized last July, so not quite a year ago, but last summer, I was listening to my pastor in church. He was talking about the parable of the talents. Now, if you're a churchgoer, you know this story. And if you are not somebody who goes to church, well, you may not be familiar with this. And as a reminder, I like to say that you do not have to be a believer to belong here. You are welcome no matter what. So let me give you some background to some of those people who aren't church people. The parable of the talents is a story Jesus told. A parable is the word for the stories that Jesus told that had a lesson in them. He was trying to get the Pharisees, the religious teachers of that day, and his disciples to understand a deeper meaning. And in the parable of the talents, it said that a landlord, a master, goes to leave on a long journey. And while he's gone, he gives 3 servants each an account of money, and they're supposed to take care of it according to their abilities. And so the first servant gets 5 talents. The second servant gets 3 talents. The talents is another word for money. And the last servant gets 1 talent. The first servant, upon the master's return, says, Master, I've stewarded your money well, and I've doubled it. Here's your 10 talents. And the master says, very good. Well done, good and faithful servant. Next time you'll get even more to manage, because you've done such a good job managing what I gave you. The second servant says much the same. Master, while you were gone, I stewarded your trust well. I doubled your investments while you were away. And so here are your 6 talents. And if I'm getting the numbers off a little bit, if it's 4 to 8 instead of 3 to 6, that's no matter. The bottom line is the Second servant did a good job, and he too doubled what he was left to steward. The last servant says, Master, I was afraid of you. I was really nervous about losing your money, so I buried it in a hole, and look, here it is, the one talent you left me with. And that master says, you wicked, wicked servant, you lazy servant. And he takes his talent from him. He takes the responsibilities he had trusted him with. He takes them away and he gives them to the servant, the first servant, who produced 10 talents. And the moral of that story was our talents are our responsibilities. What gifts we have, it's our responsibility to steward them well and to use them for a purpose and with passion. And I thought, wow, if there is nothing greater than what God has brought us through on this financial journey. We were stunned when we found out we had taken out $154,000 of student loans. If you had asked 17-year-old me, hey, would you like to enslave yourself for the next 7 years? Of course, I would not have said yes, but without intentionality, without a plan, with just a loan offer here, a loan offer there, signing whenever, it piled up, and it piled up fast. And so we were stunned when we found out how much we owed. And then I felt shame and I felt guilty because by that time we were parents, and now our kids were going to pay the consequences by not going to Disney, by not enjoying after-school programs or extracurriculars, because Lord knows, with $1,300 minimum student loan payments, you can't afford ballet classes. That was reality for us. And so as we scrimped and saved and budgeted our way out of debt, paying off $20,000, $30,000, $45,000 in a year, I realized, wow, God, you saved us from despair. Our marriage had become brittle. He healed us through that extremely difficult period of time. This is what I'm supposed to do. I am supposed to go encourage everybody out there. You can take control of your finances. You can totally right the ship. You can turn this car around and start going in the right direction. You can make decisions that 10 years older you will appreciate. Your future self can turn around and say, thank you, previous self, for making those hard, tough, difficult decisions. And I want to walk you through them. That's the point of this show. And I want to be honest and encouraging with you. And so one of the ways I do that is through this show. We're talking about the Proverbs 31 woman. What does a homemaker have to do with money? Well, it turns out the Proverbs 31 woman, again, for people who are not church people, Proverbs 31 woman was a queen. She was held up as the standard for the kind of woman a king should look to marry. And it wasn't just about being a homemaker, as she is often portrayed. No, in fact, she was a boss with her career, with money, with investments, with her relationships. She went to market. She saw that her trade was good. Her merchandise was good. So she was an investor. There's a lot more to the Proverbs 31 woman than I had previously given her credit for. So I like to look at the Proverbs 31. The chapter in Proverbs is chapter 31, and it's this ancient book of scripture. And I like to look at her verses and see, wow, what can we pull out from way back then that will help us today in our relationships, in our careers, and of course, in our money. And so this episode, Proverbs 31, verse 20. Proverbs 31, verse 20 says, she opens her arms to the poor and extends her hands to the needy. Okay, so if you flip back in your Bible, just a couple verses, or if you're reading along on an app or on your Kindle, just look up a couple verses earlier. It said, just a couple verses ago, she uses a spindle and a distaff, and with her hands, she spins wool into thread. I talked a little bit about how the distaff is this thing on a stick where you hold just raw wool, and the spindle is a heavy stick or a stone or a rock that you spin, that the thread is attached to. And as you spin the stone, it pulls the fibers of the wool or the goat's fur or whatever it is into thread. And so when I saw a couple of verses ago that she uses some people call it the distaff and the spindle to make thread, I thought, okay, well, that is a perfect analogy for how sometimes our life is a total mess. We've got credit card bills and car bills and extra home equity line of credit notes piling up, and we've got personal loans and payday loans, and creditors are calling us and chasing us down and embarrassing us and filling us with shame. Well, that is a mess, and a lot of us face that. Unemployment is rampant. Even though the economy is getting better, people are still absolutely struggling paycheck to paycheck. Living is definitely on the rise. And that verse really encouraged me, because it said, well, you can take something that is formless and shapeless and can't do you much good, a big pile of wool, and you can take it and you can turn it into thread, which is a tool that you can use to clothe your family, to make tapestries, to sell, to do something. So you can take your mess and you can turn it into something useful. And in the very next verse, it says, she sees that her gain is good, her merchandise is good, and her lamp doesn't go out at night. So that really means she's an investor and a hard worker. So in layman's terms, this investing, hardworking woman has intentionality, and she can take something useless and turn it into something useful to sell or serve her own family. And all of that character, skill, and diligence in turn allows her to go and extend her hand to the poor, hold out her hands to the needy. She could be generous. And of course it does. Doesn't that make sense? It's hard to be generous when you're broke. It's hard to give to your friend's adoption fund when you're wondering if your lights are going to be turned off. It is crazy hard to be generous when your pantry is bare. It's hard to be generous when you live paycheck to paycheck. Generosity, that is the natural outpouring of stewarding your money well, working hard, investing, and having extra left over. Generosity. And can I just add, it is the most fun you will have with money. It's one of my favorite things to do with money. So why give? Why tithe? Why be charitable? I worked hard for this money. Why should I give it up? Okay, so back to the biblical foundation of this show. That's where I'm going to look to for my authority when I talk about this stuff. Giving is not about the receiver. Giving is about what God is doing in the giver, right? I don't want to forgive that person. They're a jerk, right? Well, there's an analogy there to giving, forgiving and giving. You forgive someone even when they don't deserve it. We give charitably, not because somebody has earned enough points in our book that we give them the money. No, that's a wage. But giving is not expecting something back. It's in the same way what happens for us every day. The scripture says Christ died for us. God is a giver, and we are a receiver who never deserved it. So anyway, all of this stream of consciousness to say that generosity is my favorite part of money and managing money well. And I want to help you be able to be generous too. Now, some people say, I can't give right now. I'm just not in that phase. America's financial guru, Dave Ramsey, says, well, if you can't live on 90%, you can't live on 100%. And 90 versus 10%, that goes back to the word in the Christian world for tithe, meaning a tenth. And that goes back to scripture saying, give a tenth of your first fruits, give a tenth of your income. And so for people who believe, giving and tithing is not a salvation issue. That means you're not going to burn in an eternal damnation if you don't tithe. It doesn't mean you're automatically missing out on Jesus and eternity with the Father. But like I said, we give because we know what it's like to be on the receiving end spiritually, but also Dave and I, we know what it's like to be on the receiving end when we had nothing left. I've received a random check in the mail that made the difference between rent and no rent. Once we moved to a foreign city with no plan, and it was only thanks to the generosity of other people who helped us figure out a way when we got there that saved us from wandering the streets. And so I encourage you, learn about giving, learn about tithing. And I want to go back to the spiritual part of all of this conversation. I am using God's word to illuminate how we should handle our finances. I'd rather have the creator of the universe tell me what to do than me just make it up as I go along. Like I said, you don't have to believe in God to get the most out of this, but I want to give you some background. My California pastor says he teaches the there and then. Everybody say there and then. And there and then means you have to know what was going on there in Jesus's geography back then in Jesus's time to understand how that translates to what we can understand here and now. And so before Christ, back in like the Moses days, remember the movie, The Prince of Egypt? God, that's such a good movie. In the Moses days, after Moses and the Hebrews escaped from Egypt, well, later the tabernacle is built, and that is a tent. Like the first, you could think of it as the first church, but only priests could go in. Not just anybody could go in. Only a certain specific tribe of Israelites could go in. Only a specific set of people could approach God in the tabernacle. And in order for the ancient Israelites to be clean and to be able to even approach God, they had to give up something. They had to sacrifice a perfect animal. Or if they weren't a farmer themselves, they had to pay a large sum of money to purchase a perfect animal. They would take that perfect lamb or that perfect ram or that perfect cow to the priest so he could slaughter it in a very specific, detailed ritual. It was bloody. It involved death. Something else, if you were in ancient Israel, something else had to die in order for you to come close to God. Something else had to die for you if you were an ancient Israelite. That law of Moses continued on until Christ. And he said, I fulfilled the law. I am the perfect lamb. And then Christ was murdered on a cross. He was murdered and hung on 2 telephone poles, essentially. And he was the sacrifice forever, so that today we don't have to continue sacrificing a perfect animal in order to come close to God anytime we sin, right? Anytime we are less than perfect, less than holy. So when people who say they belong to Christ, or people who say that they are followers of Jesus, remember, Jesus calls us to be Christ-like. And what is the thing that Christ was? Christ was generous. He gave the ultimate gift. He gave his life so that we could have a relationship with God. It's just incredible to me. So when I think about why should I tithe? Why should I give to charity? So many of those charities mismanage their funds. You've seen the news articles talking about that. It's not worth it to give. That's just money down the drain. Well, it's about us, what we become as givers. So I want to encourage you. Have fun giving. Now that Dave and I are out of debt, we can afford to tip the bill. It's a challenge where you go to a restaurant, you eat at a restaurant, and instead of doing a 15% tip, you look at how much your bill costs and you double it and you tip the bill. Or we've just left a crisp $100 bill on the table. And when we do, we skip out giddy, excited that we get to help somebody. We have no idea what their circumstances are, but it is so fun to leave a crazy generous tip. It is so joyful. It's just making me smile big right now, thinking of all the times Dave and I have snuck out of a restaurant so they wouldn't see us. I think one time somebody said, "This is not right." And we said, "Oh, yes, it is." So from now on, we just sneak out early so they can't stop us and try to give back their tip. Generosity is fun. That's the point of managing your money well. The Proverbs 31 woman was generous. She reaches out her hands to help the needy. Let's look at a tribe question. Dear Katie, I'm in baby step 2, so I can't give. How can I be generous when I don't have any margin? Okay, this is a great question. This is a great question because I've been there too. I understand how it feels. Baby step 2, as a reminder, this is the second of 7 steps to go from broke as a joke to having financial peace and having wealth so that you can give it away generously. Baby step 2 is paying off all your debt, everything but the mortgage if you're a homeowner, all your credit cards, all your car notes, all your payday loans, your personal loans, anything that is debt, student loans, you pay it off in baby step 2. So you're supposed to live on the absolute minimum. You're not going to Target, you're not going to Whole Foods, you are doing Walmart grocery pickup only. You're not shopping on Amazon. You're not going out to eat. Dave Ramsey says the only time you see the inside of a restaurant is if you work there. And that is how you release all your funds so that you can throw them on your debt so you can become debt-free once and for all. So obviously, if I'm giving all my money away to Sally Mae or to Visa or MasterCard because I'm trying to get them out of my life forever, how do I have anything left to give with? Okay, 3 quick ideas. You can give your time, number 1. Maybe there is an organization in your area that needs somebody to put packets together, or maybe there's a group of people who need somebody to stand outside and wave flags or pack cars or do something. People need hands, people need help, people need your time. That is one way you can be generous, even when you're in baby step 2. Number 2 is to give your talents. Maybe you're an excellent sewer and you can help somebody put together a bunch of gifts for their organization's giveaway. Maybe you are amazingly organized and the foster care system could use your skills. Maybe you're just talented in who knows how many ways. Somebody needs those talents. How can you use those talents to help others? Maybe it's at your church, maybe it's at a local organization, maybe it's at your kid's school. Time, number 1, talents, number 2, or number 3, give your 10%. Okay, this is immediately going back to what we were talking about regarding the tithe and being generous spiritually. I remember that I could not financially donate before. I've been there, so no shame there. But we can tend to bring with us this mental idea, a mindset that we'll just never be able to give. And that's the same mindset that traps people in paycheck to paycheck living, no matter how much they make, right? We all know doctors, dentists, lawyers, engineers, high earners, NFL players who live paycheck to paycheck. So it's not how much you make, it's what you do with what you make that counts. So here's how you be generous while you're in debt. You give at the top of your budget. You write out your plan for your money for the month, your absolute four walls at the top. That's your clothing, your shelter, your transportation, your food, and your utilities. You probably don't need to buy new clothes every month, so it's just shelter, food, transportation, and utilities. After that, everything else is a maybe. After that, your bills. After that, giving. Put it at the top of your budget. Don't plan your entire month and then think, okay, well, if I have anything left over, I'll be generous, because generosity will never happen that way if that's how you plan it. No, you have to make sure giving is at the top. It's a priority, or it'll never happen. Speaking of talking about your budget, shall we look at one together? If you haven't started your budget yet, I recommend you use an app called Every Dollar, and it is part of a Ramsey Plus membership. Ramsey Plus gives you access to online classes like Financial Peace University, which are live classes, and tons of other great resources, including doing your taxes and, of course, the budgeting app, which I love. So let's click Start Planning. And then as it loads, you'll see that your income is at the top. So let's pretend like this is your budget. Let's say you get first paycheck is $2,000, second paycheck $2,500. Maybe that's too much. Let's say our second paycheck is just $500. So we're working with take-home pay of $2,500 a month. Okay, so at the very top, I've put giving. That way, it's the top priority. So if I make $2,500 in a month, I want to put 10% to giving. 10% of 2,500 is $250. So I give that to my local church. For you, that might be to a missionary, might be to an organization, but there it is at the top. Now, next on down the budget is savings. Let's talk about where you save real fast if you're in the baby steps. If you're on baby step number 1, that's saving $1,000 for emergencies. If you already have $1,000 in the bank, you don't need to save this. If you're in baby step number 2, so before I move on, I'll just say, so in my budgeting app, I just updated my emergency fund savings for this month to 0, because I'm not going to save anything extra if I have $1,000 in the bank already. So right now I'm saving 0. If you're in baby step number 2, that's using all your money that you can to get out of debt. In baby step 2, you're not saving up for anything unless it is a dire need. For example, if you know that this summer your brother is going to come home and take his car back and you can't use his free car anymore, and you know, okay, I'm going to have to buy a car this summer. Okay, that is one case where you can save during paying off your debt. But you're not saving for Christmas. You're not saving for vacations. You're not saving for your anniversary. You're not saving for a friend's trip or a big purchase. In baby step 2, you are freeing up all your income so that you can be debt-free as soon as possible. Baby step 3, well, that is a big savings step. You're saving 3 to 6 months of expenses so that you have a nice cushion so you never go in debt again. Baby step 4, 5, and 6, those are the coasting steps. Those are where you're investing for you, you're saving for your kids, and you're paying off your mortgage early. In those steps, feel free to save all you want, as long as you're getting your 15% invested for retirement, something for your kids' college if that's appropriate for your situation, and something so that you're paying off your mortgage early. That is when you start your sinking funds for putting in a pool or upgrading cars, or taking a nice vacation. But other than that, other than those steps, and of course, baby step 7 is building wealth and giving it all away. Other than those steps, make sure that you are not saving in baby step 2. And if you're in baby step 1, that you're definitely saving a lot. So you can get $1,000 in the bank. So let's say your rent is $900, water is $180, gas is $30, electricity is $125. Or if you're in Texas, $125,000. Just kidding, not really. Cable is $190. Oh, you got to call that provider and ask them to cut your bill or cut it entirely. And if you pay for trash, Make sure your utilities are up to date. This looks pretty good to me. That's pretty similar to real life, so I'm going to leave that there. Okay, how much do you need to buy in gasoline to get you to work and back? A lot of people are working remote today, so I'm going to take down my gas budget to $150 a month. If you need to fill up a car with a bigger tank and less good miles per gallon ratio, then you need more in your gas budget. Or if you're going to drive a lot more, this is very different per person. Maintenance, I don't know what that is. I'm going to zero that out. Okay, how much am I going to plan for groceries? Well, when I was in debt, my husband and I planned on $80 to $100 a week for a family of 4, and then a family of 5, and then a family of 6. And you learn to get really frugal with food. There are tons of great resources online. If this is you trying to figure out how to make your budget stretch, I highly encourage you just to search Facebook for those frugal food groups, or look on Pinterest, just Google. Or there are some other good resources on my website, katihyershow.com, and that can help you out a lot. I'm not going to put anything toward restaurants right now. Let's look at family. Okay, for me, date night is a must. And then I also have a line item for fun stuff with kids. For example, today in my school, it's Dr. Seuss Day. So last year I bought some Dr. Seuss outfits so my kids could wear them to school. If you have kids, or if you have nieces and nephews in your life that you want to buy something for, you need to make sure that purchase too is in the budget. I already bought that. I'm not putting it in my budget this week or this month. And then anniversary. If you're married, why not plan to have a nice anniversary every year? If you are in baby step 3 or beyond, plan to save a little something every month so you can get there. I'm not going to update this at this point. Okay, the next item is Dave spending money and Katie spending money. We have $20 each. It's not very much at all. This budget is for a very modest income. So this could look very different for you. If your income is $5,000 a month, $10,000 a month, well, you can afford to spend a little more on yourself. For this budget, we're going to keep it to $20. That is because in this budget, we have a lot of debt. There's a credit card bill for $130, a car payment at $275, student loans are $200, medical bill is $332. So with all of that in mind, we still have to find another $500 so we can cover all our bills. And I haven't even put in childcare in here. So what do you do when you find that you are over budget by some $500? It's happened to me before. It can happen to you. It can happen to anybody. Well, our giving budget is 10%. Our housing budget is 54%. Let's go look back at housing. If you are $500 over, you have got to make some hard decisions, because you can't just live $500 over budget every single month. That's not going to end well. That's going to end with an eviction notice. So in this budget, this person makes $2,500 a month. On a $2,500 take-home pay, your rent should be around $600, $700. That's because your housing cost should not be more than a quarter of what you take home every month, because otherwise it just eats up all your margin. You'll You're house poor. That's what it's called. So in this person's case, you need a renter, a subletter. Maybe your sister needs a place to stay, or maybe there's a college kid you can have bunk in your over the garage apartment, or maybe you have a spare room that your cousin needs to stay at. Whatever it is, you got to make some income. So you either need to move to a cheaper place or you need to bring up your income. So let's pretend like we're going to get a renter. The renter is going to rent out your guest suite for $300 a month. Okay, good. We're making some money, but remember to update your tithe. So $300 means we need to tithe $30. So I'm just going to add $30 to the tithe or to charity or to giving, whatever you want to call it in your life. So now I am only $315 over budget. Okay, right away, time to cut cable. You can't afford it. If you're $300 in the hole, you cannot afford cable. So cut it. Now we're only $215 over budget. How about we turn off all the lights, unplug everything, put everything on mega low setting, and set your AC lower in the winter and higher in the summer. Let's do everything we can do to bring down that electricity bill, $115, something like that. We're only $205 over budget now. You got to scrimp somewhere. So it's hard to feed one person, two people, three. It's hard to feed six people on $100 a week. But if it's just you, well, you can live on that easily. So let's bring our grocery budget down to $320 this month. Let's just say this budget is for just a single person. Okay, now you're only $175 over budget. I am going to suggest that you look for other ways to bring in some income. Let's say you have a garage sale this weekend and you make $500. Boom, $500 goes in on the very top of your budget under income. We'll call it garage sale. Garage sale, $500. Now we've got $325 left to budget. You take down your $325 and you put it straight toward your baby step. So this person's baby step is baby step 2. We are paying off our debts. In this case, the credit card is going to get paid off. So we are going to put all 325 plus 130 is 455 to the credit card. And now we're at an every dollar budget. This is how you budget. You plan for every single expense to have a purpose, to have a name, to have a place to go. Don't let anything slide into the, oh, it's just extra money category. Because if you have just extra, that extra is going to get blown at Chick-fil-A and at Walmart and Amazon and Target. Make sure it is in your plan. Intentionality is going to help you win at this. Now, I am excited to share a fun interview I had with my friend Brian, one of the few dudes on this show, because he is a really cool author and writer and just thought leader in faith and finances. And so dig into this interview. You are going to love it. Brian, welcome to the show.
Hey, Katie, it's great to be here.
I am so glad to have you on. For all of my listeners and everybody watching out there, my guest today is Brian Jewell. He is the brains behind a number of brilliant things, including the God, Money, and Me website. He's a writer, a speaker, and he has launched 30 Days to Financial Freedom, an incredible course that helps people walk through all the things they need to do to get to financial freedom. Did I get that right?
That's it. Yeah, that's awesome.
And I wanted to have you on because you have such good takeaways for people trying to figure out this money thing. And you have a lot to say about the heart of the matter. In fact, you say freedom starts with the heart. What does that mean for our finances?
Yeah, so freedom starts in your heart. One of my very favorite verses in the Bible is from Proverbs 4, chapter 23, and it says, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it, or everything you do comes out of it. And I don't think there's an area of life that doesn't apply to. But when I have been facing down the money demons in my own life, I found that every financial problem I've ever had always comes back to my heart. And if I'm going to take the Bible at face value, when it says everything you do comes from it, that means that everything you do with your money, everything you do to try to succeed financially or to try to fix mistakes that you've made, it all starts in your heart. So, if you're struggling with debt, the reason you got into debt to begin with started in your heart. And what's going to get you out of debt is some kind of heart change that's going to break the habits and the cycles that got you there in the first place and set you on the right road to the outcome that you want to have and to living the life of freedom that I believe God made you for.
So, what did that look like in your life? What were some of the things that you guys dealt with as you were walking this journey?
So, my story is interesting. I don't have a dramatic six-figure debt story. You've got an amazing debt story and it's fantastic and so
Pish
inspiring.
posh.
My story is so much more about identity and the role that money and status and things like that have played in my identity. I got to a place in my 20s where I was letting my net worth determine my self-worth.
Ah,
And I didn't like what money had to say about me because I'm just a kind of average guy working I had a job that I really enjoyed and I made enough money to support myself. And, me and my wife, between the two of us, we could, pay the bills and get everything done. But I would compare myself constantly to other people in my world and just find myself so dissatisfied with what I had. And there's a lot of envy and jealousy and spite and things that came along with it. And so my heart was just turning into this cesspool of
ugh.
awful motivations because, I was looking at the size of my house or the size of my paycheck or the size of my bank account or a retirement account or whatever to tell me what I was worth as a person. And I got so sick of living that way that I turned to the Bible to figure out what I was doing wrong. And that's when I discovered that the problem was all in my heart. And so I went on a journey about a year to literally read every verse in the Bible that the Bible said about money. Because, you
Wow.
hear people talk about there's, whatever, a few hundred times that the Bible mentions money, right? So I wanted to read all of them and I did that. And it changed my heart so much from the inside out that I actually started that website, God, Money, and Me, just as a way to sort of document that journey. So that's how it all began.
Interesting. Yeah, I have heard that quote, comparison is the thief of joy. So
Absolutely.
you couldn't even enjoy your house. You're too busy comparing to other houses.
Yeah. And it was so silly because I knew, I'd traveled internationally. I'd been on mission trips. I've done some other work abroad and I've seen real poverty. Right. And when you go and do something like that, you're immediately struck by how blessed you are to have even a very middle-class existence in the United States. But, then 6 months later, you're back home and you've forgotten all that and you're envious because your friend's got the new car or the bigger house or whatever, the granite countertops. And you're sitting here looking at your life saying, oh, this is crap. When you know better, but your heart, when your heart is latched on to envy, it doesn't matter what you've seen. Your heart's just driving you.
Wow. When your heart's latched onto envy, it doesn't matter what you've seen. Your envy is just driving you.
Yeah.
That is so good. But I think we've all been there, whether we're facing a mountain of student loans like we did, or whether it was a identity and comparison and contentment thing that you guys did. We are in this environment of compare it to everybody. I mean, I can grab my phone and just share what a great life I'm having right now on social media. We're mired in this environment of comparison. So what do you do? How do you focus on the good stuff and get rid of that envy?
Well, it all starts in your heart, and there's a number of different things that I like to take people through. One of them is just gratitude. That's kind of step one. You can't be grateful and envious at the same time. I can't thank God for the wife and the kids and the family and the job and all that He's given me, but also grumble against Him for what He hasn't given me in the same breath. Same breath. So gratitude is number one, but something else that this is kind of counterintuitive to a lot of people, but generosity I found is so important for breaking that cycle. Because when we give, when you tithe, I believe in tithing, but whether that's your jam or not, when you give, you are taking the eyes of your heart off of your own circumstances and off of your own problems and looking out into the world to see where you can make a difference. And I found the more I set my heart on making a difference with my money, the less I'm concerned about how I stack up in all the traditional measures of status.
That is so good. And on this show, I say you don't have to believe to belong. So for those of you following along who just heard the word tithe and you're not really sure what that is, in the Christian tradition, that tends to mean 10% of your income goes to your local church or to charity. But that, of course, is a beautiful thing to do in your regular life as well. So one of the things that you said is you were talking about some of the things you like to walk through with people one day at a time. Can you tell us if there's something I can walk through just day by day, or is this going to be like a 20-year long process? How does success happen?
Well, it's both and. We live in a microwave world, right, where we're all looking for instant solutions to our problems. And that's a really natural impulse, because when you are in financial stress, the problem can seem so huge and so imminent, and it looms over every area of your life. So what I like to do is to give people some really quick things they can do to start making a difference, but also teach them that we're establishing habits that are going to take you to success if you make them part of your life for the rest of your life. I talk about diligence a lot. The Bible talks about diligence. It says the hand of the diligent will prosper. And I define diligence as hard work applied faithfully over time. So that's why in 30 Days to Financial Freedom, for instance, I teach everybody everything they need to know in 30 days. So you have a very quick solution at your fingertips. But what you're doing in those 30 days is learning the habits that you're going to use for the months or the years that it's going to take you to get out of debt, to build your wealth, to start investing for the future, to become generous, and really to start making a difference in the world. So, I found that anything worth doing in life always happens a little bit at a time, day after day. Anytime I've tried to take some massive effort to make change in my life really quickly, I flamed out after a few days, a few weeks, whatever. It's just not sustainable. That's not what we're built to do. But do something small for 5-10 minutes a day, for a month, for 6 months, for a year, and you make amazing progress in your life. And so, financial freedom, it probably can't be won in a few days. It probably can't be won in a year. But if you take the right concepts and combine them with the right heart, then over the course of your life, you're going to achieve so much more than you ever thought you could.
You made me think of the lottery winner who gets this gigantic windfall of cash. But then what happens in a year? They're broke. All their relationships have totally gone up in flames, and all that money is gone. It's because they didn't do the daily diligences. So let's talk tactically. What are some of those things that you walk people through? For example, in your 30-day course, what's something somebody would do on one of the days to improve their financial situation?
Yeah, so each day consists of about 10 minutes of video lessons. It's three short lessons in each day, 3 short videos, each like 3 or 4 minutes long. One of those lessons, we're going to talk about your heart specifically. So something in your heart, in your relationship with money in the past, in your relationship with God, that's going to help you really focus your heart away from those bad habits and toward the good habits. Then the second lesson is going to be something practical. So one day we talk about, how to buy groceries in a way that helps you save money instead of spending unnecessary money.
Okay, well, how do people mess up with groceries? Let's jump into that.
Okay, well, the key, as you know, to succeeding with money over the long term is a budget. I can't say it enough. Budget.
The B word.
The B word. And the biggest problem that people have is they go to the grocery store without a budget. And so when you don't know how much you can spend at the store, then you are just going to buy on impulse. You're going to buy what sounds good. You're likely not to have a plan for what you're going to be making for your family. And so, and it's interesting, buying frozen foods, buying pre-made meals and stuff, that actually ends up being more expensive than buying like fresh meat, some fresh produce, simple starches and things like that. And so people go to the store, they don't have a budget and they don't have a plan for their meals. And so they walk out an hour later with a cart full and a $200 spend. And they go home and they say, what happened? How did I spend $200? And 4 days later, they still don't have enough. They're out of food,
Yep.
So how did I spend $200 and I still
And
don't
I'm
have
still
enough?
hungry.
And I'm still hungry.
Yep.
But if you've done a budget and you know how much you can spend on groceries for the week, then you make a plan ahead of time. You go to the store knowing I'm going to get these 3 different cuts of meat. I need 6 different vegetables, 5 different fruits, a couple of grains. I need this for lunches. I need this for breakfast. And you can make a plan ahead of time. And what's so awesome if you do something like Instacart or one of these grocery delivery services or pickup services is you can actually shop it online before you ever get there. So you know exactly how much it's going to be. And if you're going over budget, then you take one thing out of the cart online, put another thing in the cart. You don't have the embarrassment of actually doing it at the checkout counter, so I know, right?
I have definitely been there.
Yeah.
When my husband and I were first married 11 years ago, we were in college. And so we were still figuring out how to do this whole grown-up thing. I think it's called adulting these days.
Yeah.
But at that point, we thought that every dinner needed to be anchored by a slab of meat and then have a side and then have a vegetable. And then the next night it had to be totally different.
Right.
And so, you could have just taken our wallet and lit it on fire, and gotten the same result because we weren't good at figuring out, okay, well, how does this meatloaf go with lasagna, and how can I make leftover tacos work with, this platter of fruit? I couldn't see it. So we spent a ton of wasteful dollars on food because of exactly what you're talking about. We didn't know how to shop on a plan. We didn't know how to think creatively. And there were no delivery apps when we got married. So I was the one with my cash in my hand saying, put that back, put that back, put that back. So if you've never heard of Instacart that Brian just mentioned, that is just one of a zillion apps where you can go on your computer or on your phone and you can order your groceries ahead of time and be on a plan and stick to the budget. And that's the second thing I wanted to mention. I always call the budget the B word because people have such just horrible thoughts and feelings when they hear the baggage that, resonates when you say the word budget. So remember, dear listeners, dear watchers, it's a plan. It's a blueprint. It's a travel itinerary. It's a recipe. It will just help you go from here's the money I have to here is the financial freedom I want later. Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I like to help people get outside of the baggage of the word budget. But this has been fantastic, Brian. I appreciate all your nuggets of wisdom. I'm going to share more information about the course in the show notes because everybody should take a look and get involved. I just have one question. Sure. Would you consider coming back on the show one day?
Absolutely. I'm happy to do it. Just sign me up. You know where to find me.
That would be awesome. Thank you so much, Brian Joel. It's been a pleasure. That was awesome. I had such a great time interviewing Brian on the show. And I took some notes because, as my pastor says, history makers are note takers. And I love what he said about you can't be grateful and envious at the same time. And just like we've been talking about in the rest of this episode, he talked a lot about generosity, and generosity takes the eyes off of your own circumstances and puts your heart on the world. The more I focus on the impact my money has, the less I have to worry about how I stack up, is what he said in that interview. And then how do you get to success with financial freedom? I said, is it quick wins or is it just long haul stuff? And he said, success is both and. I love that response, both and, instead of either or. You need quick things to win, to keep going, but you also have to make long-term decisions to really make a difference in your finances and in the world. And so for all of my subscribers, Brian has set up a link to his course that you can check out. It's 30 Days to Financial Freedom. And with the course, you can stop worrying about money. I love this course. I enrolled in it and it is so easy. It's fun. And Brian makes everything simple like it should be. So you can save 15% off of the course by just going to 30dayfreedom.com/Katie, Kati. So just remember, you can absolutely do this. You can be generous while you're in debt. You can be generous while you're working the plan. You can be generous and it will change you.